North Carolina is going all in on basketball and football. Can they coexist, or is it doomed to fail?
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, March 5th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your Wednesday going right. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels Discord family as well. Y'all, there are multiple shows out today. We've got our live reaction from last night's Virginia Tech game. We've got our full normal Wednesday show, but today I'm going to be joined by CBS Sports' Matt Norlander, who is a phenomenal college basketball voice. He and Gary Parrish host the Eye on College Basketball podcast, my favorite college basketball podcast that's not Locked On College Basketball. So I'm very excited to be able to have a conversation today with Matt, who's done some great work reporting on all the news with Bill Belichick and North Carolina basketball's front office and how that all works together. Let's get right into it. It's great to be joined today on Locked On Tar Heels by CBS Sports' Matt Norlander. Folks, if you're a regular of the show, we've had multiple of the CBS guys on. Kyle Boone, Cam Salerno. I guess we're just becoming a CBS affiliate over here on the Locked On Network. Something I need to say right out of the gate. We are recording to the minute 2 hours before Carolina and Virginia Tech tip off on Tuesday night. So there's that, right? Let's just get that out there that we do not know the outcome of that game in Castle Coliseum. Matt Norlander, back on December 18th, you wrote a great article after the Bill Belichick hire, which, by the way, I've linked in the show notes, folks. You need to go back and read it if you've not, about how Carolina's hiring of Bill Belichick and going all in on football might affect Carolina basketball. Basically, a concern that I've been calling it forgetting where the bread is buttered. My question to you is, as last Tuesday, Carolina announced the hiring of Jim Tanner as the GM, then you reported basically the potential of an entire front office, including potentially Buzz Peterson, college roommate of His Royal Airness, and NBA exec himself. My question, Matt, is that enough to allay the fears of the Carolina fan base?
Allay the fears. I like the way that you put that. It probably isn't. Now, some stuff has changed or at least developed since the article that you referenced, because the Bill Belichick hiring was obviously one of the three biggest sports stories of December. And you could probably say it was one of the five biggest sports stories of the entire football season. We're talking about Bill Belichick coaching at North Carolina, which is still one of those things that when it happens next year, I'm going to need to actually see him on the sideline in UNC gear and a hood and a cutoff hoodie, the whole deal, to be like, oh, wow, that dude is actually coaching in college football. But there's so much, there's been so much tied to Carolina, as you and your audience well know. The fact that we have reached the point now with Jim Tanner, and not just Jim Tanner, I reported last week as well. I still don't think this has been acknowledged publicly yet, but told by multiple sources. Buzz Peterson will also be a part of this. If it has, I've missed it. Sorry. There's 1,000 things going on in college basketball, and I can't keep up with every single transaction that comes with every passing day here. And then there will be like a true out and out front office, and some of the stuff where UNC men's basketball is now has been a reaction and result of what happened and all of the craziness that led to Bill Belichick even being offered the job and accepting to coach at Carolina, and the tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars that have been injected into the football program. Well, Hubert Davis and his men's basketball program have not been adequately financially supported for a number of years. This is based off stuff that I've seen, and it's also based off of sourcing both around the program, and there's just general people that work in the college athletic space that work in NIL, that are agents, etc. This is no big secret. So now Carolina is going to try and bring in a full-on front office and try and get to a point where next season's roster, whatever it looks like, however it's built, is not done on the cheap, is done in the most efficient way possible from a scouting and analytics perspective, but also, paying the players and NIL and potential expected revenue sharing as well. There's a lot there. My own opinion is that I think there is a chance that you have too many people now involved. Hubert Davis is the boss. Who is making the calls on what players are looked at in the portal, let alone what players you get in the portal and what players you offer, all that stuff, right? Jim Tanner's going to oversee a lot of the, as I understand it. In fact, I can almost, let me search up one of my sources here. I'm going to give you the exact wording that this person gave me.
Great.
So it sounds like Tanner is going to oversee the revenue sharing and the management of the revenue share funds that are come with it. Buzz Peterson is going to almost be like a co-GM. He'll have similar scouting responsibilities to what he's done in the NBA. Quote unquote, he'll run a draft board for the program as well. And then there's going to be people underneath that as well. And by the way, this doesn't even take into account the assistants that have kind of done this job previously. I wonder if it is actually too much, but they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Hubert Davis going into next season. And with that, hoping that this can work. I think it's clear that Davis will, and no matter how this go, really no matter how it goes, barring like winning the ACC tournament, getting to like the Elite Eight, that kind of outcome aside, like he'll enter next season, Davis will, on the hot seat and needing to have a pretty substantial season in order to find some level of comfort on the cake.
It's funny. That sounded very Kevin Keatsy from last year, Matt, as you talk about that there.
Yeah.
Now, like you say it, right? Like there's going to be so many cooks in the kitchen. We've had this conversation a lot. Where is the buck going to stop when it comes to roster decisions, roster construction? All of that is a big fear. You know, Carolina brought in TJ Beisner last year from Kentucky, had a chance to make him GM, didn't ultimately do that. And we're very much, in my opinion, behind the times. It seems now that they're trying to catch up. As we continue to compare this to what Carolina is doing in Kenan Stadium with the football team, do you think there's a world in which this can be a rising tide lifts all boats rather than Carolina football versus Carolina basketball? Can it be a both and situation? What do you think?
Maybe. Now keep in mind, obviously, as your audience knows, I don't live in the Triangle area, so I'm viewing this very much about as objectively as I can and from afar and what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing. But there is some nuance to knowing the program, and I respect those like yourself and folks that are really living it day in, day out. There is a chance. I still can't get away from the fact that I've heard from Carolina people who are one of the biggest thing is they're looking around and they're going, where's all the money? Where's this coming from? How are we suddenly putting in, if you account for what is going to be on the books with football and men's basketball, in addition to, the women's basketball program, which shouldn't just be discarded and tossed aside because it's going to be a factor here. We're looking at more than $50 million. Just suddenly this huge influx of money. Where is it coming from? Is this a one-time thing? How long will Bill Belichick be coaching there? There's a chance that could happen. Yes. My own personal wonderment is, you've got the greatest player in the history of the sport who happens to be a billionaire. I'm genuinely curious. Has someone quietly, because maybe for whatever reason, maybe MJ wouldn't want it to be out there. Was he just kind of like, here, take $5 million. Okay, just finally do it. Because he couldn't do that when he was an owner of an owner of the NBA. That was strictly forbidden. But now that role has gone away. And so one of my UNC sources kind of amused that aloud. Like, are we getting 23 to help us a little bit here? Like, is this actually going to be the case now? I know Carolina fans and the staff and the program would certainly wish that Jordan, who's not shy about his pride of his university, if he was willing and wanting and able to be even more forthcoming in that, we'll see. Could it rise all boats with this tide? Maybe. As a reporter, I have to be open to the possibility that this really blows up and goes wrong. And if it does, that's a real problem because it's a very expensive problem, especially at a state university. I'm not well versed. I know the story that came out from The Athletic that Brendan Marks did a really good job on. I'm not well versed in all, and that's outside my purview, and frankly, didn't have an impact on the stuff that I've been reporting on and writing on previously. But big picture, it feels like a very, very critical period of time for the University of North Carolina and its athletic department Bubba Cunningham just happens to be the chair of the selection committee this season. There's been rumors about how long Bubba would be still the athletic director at Carolina of his own volition or not, whether that's going to be something for the long term or not, because I got told by sources there was a real battle over Belichick's hiring process candidacy to begin with between people on the board and Bubba himself. So yeah, there's a lot here, and we're not going to have the answers on whether this is going to work for, minimally 10 months. But really it could be more of a tale that is 16, 20, 24 months.
Yeah. Yes. It seems like Bubba Cunningham has very much staked his claim to AD job at North Carolina based on what's going to happen here. And as you said, we'll see how that plays out. Now, Matt Norlander, with this whole big picture conversation, we still got a season going on right now, and going all in on a front office means that Coach Hubert Davis is out of excuses and is going to have to deliver more consistently in the years to come. What's led to a topsy-turvy first 4 years for him, and will Carolina make the dance this season? We'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're into plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Isaac Schade, Matt Norlander from CBS Sports with us today. Matt, so thankful for your time. It's great to be together. I want to have a big picture conversation about Carolina here, both in the short and long term. Very short term, if you were calling it today, obviously, as I said earlier, we do not know if Carolina beat Virginia Tech on Tuesday night as we record. But let's assume they did and moved to a sixth straight win with Duke looming on. They better. Good grief, they better. With Duke looming on Saturday. If you were calling it today, does Carolina get into the 2025 NCAA tournament? It seems that they found themselves lately. They're fourth in offensive efficiency at Torvik in this winning streak. But my question, is it too little too late?
I don't think it's too little too late. On the Eye on College Basketball podcast, there's been a running bit where our producer, Kanata Edwards, who lives in North Carolina, but he's over in Charlotte, he called it 2 years ago, less than half. I want to say he called it in like December, that the preseason UNC team that was number one would not make the tournament. He was right. He brought back the theme this year. He's maintained it. And Gary Parrish and I idiotically were just like, oh, they got this. No worries. Okay, again, they haven't played Virginia Tech as the time of this taping. I think I'm gonna guess. I'll say UNC wins. I'll say UNC wins on the road 77-72. I say they get the win with a little bit of breathing room. So they get the win. Duke, Carolina, you never know. I understand that, but Duke right now, man, I just saw the stat here. I'm going to bring it up. Dadgum Box Scores, who does a great job, Chris. So right now, Duke, in the history of the ACC, this year's Duke team is beating league opponents by an average of 22.2 points. That is the second best in league history to the 98-99 Duke team, which had played 16 games. This Duke squad's going to play 20, 24.3 points, and a much better ACCO, by the way. I just can't pick Carolina even at home to win that game. If UNC won, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd point to it and say that is exactly why I love college basketball, because you have a team fighting for its tournament life in an epic rivalry matchup that has overcome, disadvantages and singular matchups in the years past and beaten their hated rival. And look at that, they did it again. It can happen. I'm not picking it to happen.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, thinking that a win against Virginia Tech is going to happen in about 4 hours, and then thinking that a Duke loss will not happen, or Duke win will not happen, that will still leave UNC. Make sure my math is right here. I want to look at this real quick because I love this kind of stuff. Right now, Virginia Tech, is this a...
It's quad 3.
Dude, this is a quad... I thought this is a quad 3 game?
Yes. It's crazy.
It's brutal. Okay, so they don't even get a quad 2 result out of this, especially if UNC wins. Tech is going to still stay that way. So you'll still be 1-10 in quad 1. I want to say that on the pod a couple of years ago when we did this with UNC specifically, I think I like half serious, half jokingly made a rule that if you were from a high major conference and you got to Selection Sunday and you did not have, I think I said a minimum of 2, but it really might have been 3. If you got to Selection Sunday with 1 quad 1 win, you are disqualified, period. I'm not looking at the rest of your resume. I don't care what you've done. If you were in a high major league and you cannot get 30 plus games into a season without more than 1 quad 1 victory, I don't want to hear it. So that in mind, UNC has 1. It probably will still only have 1 when it starts the ACC tournament. I don't have a projected ACC bracket in front of me, so I can't.
Well, I'll feed you this for it. You ready? There were only 4 teams that are not North Carolina right now that would qualify for quad 1. That's Duke, Clemson, Louisville, and SMU. Carolina is going to be
on a neutral.
On a neutral, yes, it's top 50 on a neutral. Obviously,
okay.
Carolina and those 4 are the only 5 top 50s in the ACC in the net right now.
Mm-hmm. I think if UNC, okay, so hold on, one more. If you have it, Isaac, what UNC is where in the ACC stand? Let's say it splits and goes 1-1. What is it most likely to be seeded in that situation?
It's basically either going to be 4 or 5 with SMU on the other side of that. Realistically, if they're 5 seed, it'll be a single bye playing somebody coming in, and then SMU. If they're the double bye, it'll probably be SMU coming in. So that would get them
Duke in the semis.
And then Duke in the semis. That's absolutely right.
Oh my gosh!
Yes, with
gosh.
Clemson and Louisville on the other.
I'm putting you okay with that. This is helpful framing because I have not looked down the road. Boy, put me at 20% for Carolina to get in the tournament. I didn't realize that was staring at that situation. Here's the problem is that Duke wants the standalone ACC title. So it's got even more motivation against Carolina here. Right. And it still is not, I talked about this on the Tuesday episode of Eye on College Basketball with GP. Duke is still not guaranteed a 1 seed. Now it's probably going to get there, but you look at the teams that are still vying to get on the 1 line and Duke's lack of quad 1 wins, it actually will have the proper all-around motivation, even though it's so much better than everyone else in the league. My prediction now that I've wormed my way there, but I'm going to say Carolina doesn't make the tournament. Yesterday, if we'd had this conversation, I probably would have said, I'm looking at all these teams here, the cut line. Carolina will squeak in. It's going to Dayton. If you tell me that Carolina's got to face Duke in 2 of its next 4 games and has to win at least 1 of them, I just can't take that proposition right now. There's no evidence to do so. So I will say no. Tar Heels miss.
I think you're onto something there, sir. And here's the funny, crazy thing, right? While we've had Houston clinch by multiple games in the Big 12 for a second straight year, St. John's in the Big East, and Auburn now, there is a real world where if Carolina does beat Duke on Saturday, Clemson could wind up as the 1 seed in the ACC tournament. That's the crazy thing with all this, as dominant as the Blue Devils have been.
That's just,
isn't that sicko committee? That's crazy.
Come on. That's actually what I want to see happen. Just because it's ridiculous if it were to happen. I would, I'm not pro Duke, anti Duke, although there's no single team that random fans on the internet love to claim I'm more in the tank for or hate harder than Duke. It's just a natural, like I chuckle every single time it happens. Like there are people out there that are mentally tracking like how often I praise Duke or how often I take a shot at Duke. I couldn't tell you. I don't have an internal tracker. I objectively cover the program, but there's a non-small portion, I guess, of college hoops fans that think I'm one way or the other on Duke. So I bring that up to say Clemson being the 1 seed in the ACC after Duke has had the second best margin of victory in the history of the conference would be hilarious.
So that's what we'll root for. We'll see what happens. Matt, the Hubert Davis era has been marked by peaks and valleys. The inconsistency, is it due to Coach Davis and the staff? Is it due to roster construction? Is it due to the inherent landscape of the NIL portal COVID era? Check this out. I was looking back on it. I remember a couple years ago when Carolina fell out of the top 25 so quickly after being AP preseason number one. You and I interacted a little bit with it on Twitter of Carolina being the fastest ever team to do it. Mm-hmm. In the modern era of the NCAA tournament, since we've expanded to 64 teams, only 4 times has the AP preseason number one fallen out of the top 25 at some point in the season. And all 4 of those have happened since the 13-14 season, including 2 of the past 3 years. So what do you attribute all of that to, specifically with North Carolina's inconsistency?
Just so I and your listeners can keep up, I want to make sure I heard what you just said correctly.
Yes.
In the history of the preseason AP Top 25, only in 4 seasons has that team that was preseason number one fallen out of the poll entirely.
Correct. In the modern tournament era. So since 84, 85.
Okay. So since 84, 85. Okay. I definitely think the current environment of college basketball just enables this to happen more. Kansas isn't on this year, isn't on the level of Carolina, but Kansas has been preseason number one in back-to-back seasons. And last season was the worst season ever for Kansas under Bill Self until this season, which is the worst season ever for Kansas under Bill Self. So a couple of blue blood fan bases can maybe commiserate. And actually, as you well know, and your listeners know, there are a lot of historical interlacing ties between Kansas and North Carolina. They are definitely spiritual siblings in many, many ways. It's obviously everything you mentioned all in one. Some of it is the job that Hubert Davis took when Roy Williams retired is, I don't know, represents maybe, 55% of what the job actually is now. Like, it has changed rather dramatically. And Carolina, as an institution, wasn't as nimble as it needed to be. But overall, I would say that Hubert has done, he's done an adequate job. Like, in the here and now, it's frustrating. Carolina might miss the tournament again. If you're a Carolina fan, I do not blame you one bit. If you are a UNC fan, by the way, you're talking to a guy who I think that the best job in the sport is to be the head coach of the University of North Carolina. I would take it over Kentucky. I would take it over Duke. I would take it over Kansas because of the history there. Talking about a program that has more Final Fours than anyone. It's got Jordan among its many, many famous alumni. Having said that, I'm very aware of the fact that because of that, there's a little bit of arrogance with it. They haven't modernized behind the scenes the way that they should. If UNC was really humming the way that it can, like, it wouldn't necessarily be that close, or it wouldn't be up for debate because there are people that will say, no, it's Kentucky, and plenty of people say, no, it's definitely Duke, and others that would say, look at what Kansas has done. It's definitely Kansas. So that's a whole bunch just to say that if you're a Carolina fan, it's unacceptable any season not to make the tournament. I agree with you. I think that, and I think that's true of maybe 6 or 7 programs in the entire sport where the expectation is we are in the big bracket every single year. And if we don't, it's a big problem, and it gets fixed immediately. And now you've got a thing where he's missed 2 out of 4 years. You just so happen to have the situation where, the K stuff is unreal in year 1. And then, 1 seed and Sweet 16, you don't live up to seed expectation, but there's been enough good there. So, Hubert Davis he's worried about here and now and getting to the tournament. I get all that. Once the season is done, however Carolina season ends, there needs to be a wholesale look at how the program has been run, what things need to change, because we cannot have a Carolina season next season where this team is just jumping in and out of the top 25. It's a bubble team. The fan base will have zero tolerance, and there will be an outright mutiny to have a change if that's the case.
Matt Norlander is a man who enjoys a good basketball trivia question, good music, and all the things of the good life. So I got some quick hitters to fire at him coming up in just a second. Folks, we've got less than 3 minutes. We got to get this man out of here because he's given us some of his precious family time, wife hanging out with the kids. Same's happening in my house. Matt Norlander, ultra speed round. You ready? Here we go. Trivia question for you.
Okay.
You ready for this one? If none of the ACC bubble teams join Duke, Clemson, and Louisville in the 2025 NCAA tournament, it would be the fewest ACC teams in the tournament since what year, and who were those teams?
Give me three guesses. I'm gonna say 03.
Earlier, a very Michigan State friendly season.
So 2000.
Yes.
Okay, so it's 2000. What ACC teams made it in 2000? Carolina made the Final Four as an 8. Duke was obviously in. That's post Timmy Duncan. I will say Duke, Carolina, and not State, not Wake, not Virginia. At least I don't think Virginia. Give it to me. Who is it?
Let's go a team that's no longer in the conference. A little SVP action.
Maryland. Oh, God, Matt, get it together. Get it together. Maryland, obviously. There we go.
There you go. Last time the ACC had as few as 3 teams was 2000 when there were only 9 teams in this entire conference. Matt, give me your opinion. Janai Broome, Cooper Flagg, best national player of the year race since whom?
I think it's the best one since Morrison Reddick, but it might not be as Morrison Reddick was the best one since. I wrote about this about a month ago. Buddy Hield, Denzel Valentine was actually an extremely close race. It just wasn't on this level. I went back and wrote about it back then, 7, 8, 9 seasons ago now at this point. There were 10 major National Player of the Year publications or awards they handed out, and those two, Hield and Valentine, they split 5-5. So there's never been a Player of the Year race with more awards handed out with a higher split than that. But in terms of best, it's the best in 19 years.
Was that the triple OT game in Fog Allen with Buddy Hield?
Yep, set the record 46, I want to say. No visiting players ever scored more in that building than Buddy Hield.
Man, that's a where were you game. Telly, Strat, or Les Paul? Favorite electric guitar?
Strat, but I don't have a Telly. I've been procrastinating on buying a Telecaster for about 7-8 years now. I need to get this done. It's funny you bring that up because I thought about it about a week ago. This time, I play less guitar in the month of March than any month by far. It's not even close, and it's always a major bummer. But the Strat is still the go-to. Quick random personal note: if you're into the music stuff. Back in the day, before I was a sports writer, during college, I used to work. I worked at a catering hall, so I did weddings and stuff on Fridays and Saturdays during college. And the bartender there, he would on Monday nights go in every single Monday. He did this for like a decade. He was Les Paul, and this is Les in his 80s and 90s. He would go into the New York City club that Les Paul played every single Monday, and he was essentially his roadie and wound up. Les must have given this guy like 40 of his actual guitars. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but the bartender was like, come over, I'll show you the guitar sometime. I never got a chance to see it, but pretty damn cool. I mean, those things got to be collectively worth millions at this point. It was as a guy who was learning to play guitar back then, it was pretty cool to know someone that had such a tight connection to Les.
Man, that is a phenomenal anecdote. I'm all in on it. Folks, if you're not following Matt's college basketball content, you got to at least be in for the music because it is next level as well. Speaking of which, check out the Ion College Basketball Podcast. Obviously, here I'm going to tell you to watch myself and Andy Patton host the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. But your favorite college basketball host's favorite college basketball show is Ion College Basketball Podcast. I am a CBB junkie, and this is the show I'm tuning into because I don't want to hear my own voice. So let me approve for you all the Ion CBB Podcast. Great report, great knowledge, great insight from GP and Norlander, man. Folks, check it out. Matthew, thank you so much. Have a great night, my man.
Isaac, I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully good things await to hear for UNC sooner than later. But if not, the content with this program never seems to end. So I appreciate you having me on the show. Good luck, and I hope we can cross paths in person down the road soon again.
Big thanks to Matt for joining me. Great to get to chat all this stuff about North Carolina basketball and kind of football tangentially. It's good to be together today. Make sure you go give Matt a follow on all the various social medias. He's active on Blue Sky, on Twitter, and all that. Great writing, as I said earlier. I'll link some of his articles in the show notes there. Make sure you go check him out. Guys, thanks for joining us for this extra show. Don't forget, we got all of Wednesday's normal content, so lots coming at you. It's March. It's what we do. If you've not subscribed to the show on YouTube already, make sure you do so that you don't miss a second of all our great content here on Locked On Tar Heels. If you are not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you there. That link is in the show notes. If you want to go even deeper with the show, Locked On Tar Heels Insiders, where you can go even deeper with everything we're doing. Links to all my stats and charts and data free to you when you're an insider. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back again tomorrow. But until then, peace.